Council meeting. I will call this to order. Our first order of business is to have our chaplain prayer and pledges led by the Jenkins, Marcella, and Gary.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's pray. Almighty God, our refuge and strength, we turn to you in this time of great need. Once again, we lift up those affected by the floods, the fires, the tornadoes, and tsunamis, those who have lost homes and livelihoods and loved ones. We ask for your comfort and peace to surround them and for your provision to meet their needs. Grant strength to those working to rescue and rebuild. Fill us all with hope for the future. In your mercy, bring an end to this disaster and restore your people to safety and wholeness. We take this time to pray for those that were killed or hurt due to violent shootings. Please bring peace to their families and loved ones. Precious Father, please instruct us and teach us in the way that we should conduct this meeting. Please counsel us with your loving eye on us. Let our aims in this meeting be aligned with your direction. Let our plans be orchestrated by you. Father, let your will be done in this meeting so this can be a meeting that is based upon your desires for us. Whatever it is that you want to result from this meeting, Lord, let it happen. Continue to protect each one of us and our families today from all hurt, harm, and danger, seen and unseen, especially our first responders as they seek to bring peace. Let San Angelo be a city of unity and love. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. Please repeat the pledge after me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor
The Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Before we get started today, I want to make a quick announcement. If anyone is in the audience for item 6E, that's on our regular agenda, item 6E, which is a zoning case over on 14th Street, that item will not be heard today because the Planning Commission has not yet heard it and made its recommendation to the council. Again, if anybody's here today for that reason, either for or against the proposal, you can visit with the Director of Planning and Development Services, Aaron Vanoy, and visit with him to see what may be forthcoming in the future with respect to that specific case. Thanks. We have one proclamation.
Tommy, also item 6F is also being pulled for the same reason. It was not heard at Planning
Okay.
Commission.
Then item 6F, same speech. Okay. We have one proclamation today. It is the recognition of the 101st birthday of Fess Parker. I think we have a couple of folks here, and I have been instructed if I don't put this on, then Mr. Miller will chastise me severely. Thank you. Y'all want to come up, Bob, Larry? Come on. Mr. Fess Parker, famous for endearing roles as Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone in movies and on television, is a former San Angeloan who never forgot the city where he grew up. Soon after his birth in Fort Worth on August 16, 1924, Fess and his family traveled to San Angelo, where Fess spent his entire childhood and adolescence. He attended Stephen F. Austin Elementary School, graduated from San Angelo High School in 1942, where he played on the Bobcat football team. He joined the service soon after graduation and served with the U.S. Navy during World War II. Following his discharge from the service in 1946, Mr. Parker attended Hardin-Simmons University and then graduated from the University of Texas. It was at UT where Fess took a serious hankering for dramatic acting. Fess began an acting career in 1951, but it wasn't until 1954 that his big break in show business occurred. Searching for a lead actor to play Davy Crockett in one of his productions, Walt Disney watched Fess co-star in a science fiction movie called Them and was struck by Fess's portrayal of a man unswerving in his beliefs despite all odds. Fess was immediately hired for the role. Fess's career exploded with the Davy Crockett craze. Besides generating a #1 hit song, The Ballad of Davy Crockett, Fess's portrayal also created a merchandising frenzy unlike anything ever seen. Every little boy in the U.S. dearly wanted a coonskin cap, buckskin shirt, and a toy rifle called Old Betsy. After completing the series, Fess starred in numerous box office hits, including Old Yeller and The Great Locomotive Chase. Fess put his coonskin cap back on once again in 1964, starring as Daniel Boone on a 6-year run of the popular television show. Fess retired from acting at the age of 47 and began a career in real estate development and ranching near Santa Barbara, California. He often returned to San Angelo for fundraisers, other civic events, updates on the Fine Arts Museum, which at the time was in the Quartermaster Building at Fort Concho, or to simply visit with old friends, teachers, and classmates from San Angelo High School. In an article in the Standard Times in 1963, Fess spoke of San Angelo, saying fondly, "After traveling around the country, I still think San Angelo is one of the nicest residential towns I've seen. It hasn't changed, essentially, I'm glad to say. But as usual, it looks like it could stand a little rain." Fess Elisha Parker, Jr. passed away on March 18, 2010, near Santa Barbara, California. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council, I do recognize and applaud the life of Mr. Fess Elisha Parker, Jr., and encourage all citizens to join in celebrating his achievements and the 101st anniversary of his birth of this outstanding citizen of San Angelo on August 16, 2025.
Thank you very much, Councilman Hebert, for your meaningful words about Fess Parker, truly a son of San Angelo, whom we all have great reason to be proud of. It's absolutely amazing to me that this kid, when he was little, Fess Parker, rode his bike around the North Jackson Street neighborhood with his friends, attended Stephen F. Austin, delivered papers for the Standard Times, and actually carved his initials into wet cement behind his buddy's house. It's still there today. And that he would actually become a national superstar back in the day. The question I have is, how many people here haven't ever heard of Fess Parker? You can raise your hand. Come on. Come on. Did you know he was from San Angelo? Well, that's fantastic. Okay, to celebrate the 101st anniversary of Fess's birth, we'll be honoring his life on August the 16th at Fort Concho. We'll be having a morning session starting at 9 a.m., full of games, a look-alike contest, great prizes, continental breakfast, and an opportunity to have your child's picture or yourself taken with Fess. Okay, We don't have the real Fess here. We have a standee that's about 6'5", which was as tall as he was. The afternoon one, or evening, at 7 p.m., will include popcorn, refreshments, a birthday cake, a quiz, displays about Fess's life here in San Angelo, and his meteoric rise in the world of movies and showbiz. There'll also be a showing of one of Fess's most memorable films, The Great Locomotive Chase, and finally, the entire audience will have a cappella sing-along of the Ballad of Davy Crockett. Anybody in this room doesn't know that song? Come join us in honoring the life of this wonderful citizen of San Angelo, Fess Parker, and have a lot of fun along the way. Thank you again, Councilman Hebert, for this proclamation. Yeah, we gotta have evidence.
Let the record show that this was Mr. Miller's idea. Let the record also show that this is a great idea, and we cordially invite everyone to join us on August 16. Be a lot of fun, and the price is right.
Karen.
Guess that doesn't stay on. Where'd my card go? We're now at our public comment time. Members of the public may raise issues or concerns not listed on the regular agenda during this time. To participate, please sign in with the city clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting. Speakers will be called in order they signed in. When speaking, citizens must speak from the podium, address all comments to the dais, begin by stating your name and address or single-member district number, and limit your remarks to 3 minutes or less. The council has no obligation to respond to comments or questions from the public. Any response from a city council member to non-agenda comments is limited to a statement of specific factual information, recitation of existing policy, directing staff to place the subject on a future agenda. And I'm going to let our city clerk walk us through that. Heather?
Jamal Schumpert.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Council. Jamal Shumpert, 2817 North Urban Street. I just had a quick suggestion about the Northside Recreation Center on Magdalene Street. In a few years, maybe we could look into creating a small concert venue, open space area, and making amphitheater seating, maybe out of concrete or wood. I think it would be beneficial for that area to bring some type of activity back to that area. You can still use the fields for baseball or whatnot, but that I would agree that building is pretty much a wash. But that doesn't mean that the entire area or that whole park has to, go into being a detention pond. That's all I was saying. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Any others?
That concludes public comment.
That concludes our public comment section. We'll go to our consent agenda. Go down the dais here and see if anybody wants to pull an item. Mary?
I don't have one that I want to pull, but I do have a question. So is that appropriate? Can we ask those questions without pulling them?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I would say pull it.
You need to pull
And then
it.
we can discuss it after? Okay. Item 5B, yes.
Okay, Karen?
L,
Yeah.
please.
L. Patrick?
E and J.
Harry? Joe? I have nothing to pull. Okay, may I have motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items B, E, J, and L.
So moved.
Motion by Karen, do I have a second?
I second. Joe got it.
Patrick, second by Patrick. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, item B, consider approving the purchase of 3,977.16 square feet from First Presbyterian Church for the Chadbourne Phase B project for $59,000, that's the appraised value. Closing costs not to exceed $2,000, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Mr. Patrick Farrick and Ms. Sarah Torres. Question, Mary?
Just, could you explain to me what the Chadbourne Street Phase B is? What portion, or what is that portion, please?
So if you're all probably well aware that we did Chadbourne Street Phase A, which is the streetscape and the road rework from the river all the way to Beauregard. Phase B continues that same design, that same look, all the way from Beauregard to the loop. So we call that Chadbourne Phase B. As part of that Chadbourne Phase B, we obviously have to impact some of the side streets, and one of those, and what this item covers, is we're going to be aligning College Street up better so that that movement across Chadbourne Street is not so skewed. And as part of that, we have to purchase some of the right-of-way from the church there in order to get enough right-of-way to line that intersection back up. So Chadbourne Phase B is a continuation of Chadbourne Street from Beauregard to the loop, and as part of that, we need a little bit of right-of-way from the church in order to make that design match.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve item B?
So moved.
Motion by Mary, do I have a second? Second by Joe. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Item E, consider approving a fifth amendment to the Santa Fe Municipal Golf Course Services Agreement with Two Pro Management that extends the term of the agreement to September 30th, 2027, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Question, Patrick, for Mr. White.
Hello. It can be a deeper conversation eventually. My understanding is that the Santa Fe Park Commission is looking into doing more with that park, but I just want to make sure we're not just keep kicking this down the road. So do they have a plan for helping Santa Fe, or is it just business as usual? I mean, it is a cheap golf course, and a cheap golf course for a reason, but it is in pretty bad shape. So I just want to make sure we're doing right by the people that do frequent
Yes.
it.
This lines in with what we talked about a meeting or two ago about the request for qualifications to develop a river master plan that includes Santa Fe Park. And so that process is going to take a while. We just released the request for qualifications last week. We'll go through the process of receiving those and meeting to make a recommendation on whom to hire. That'll come back to City Council probably in October, and we'll start that process to look at the entire park, river parks, including Santa Fe Park and the golf course, as to what we envision it to be in the future, including incorporating that Concho River Legacy Trail Sculpture Project into those properties. So we figured with 2 years, and this was a recommendation of the Santa Fe Park Commission, we figured with extending this agreement 2 years, it'll give us time to go through that process and all come together and come up with a plan of what to do with that property.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds good. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Motion by Patrick to approve. Second by Karen. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Hold on.
No.
We have one public comment.
Okay.
Jamal Schumpert.
Jamal Shumpert, 2817 North Irvin. Councilman Keeley, you brought up a great point. The master plan development, I think we should have a lot of town halls and see what people would like to install in that river park. Not just the committees, but actual town halls so people can make suggestions. We use that park for quite a few different things. And maybe the community has suggestions that other communities would love to come see here in San Angelo. So that's why I think it should be a town hall thing, not just a committee member thing, and then it comes up to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamal.
Tommy, just to clarify on that, it is listed within the proposal that the consultants will hold those town hall meetings.
Okay. You hear that, Jamal? Okay. We already voted on that. Unfortunately, I got us out of order there. Was it 6-0? Anybody want to change their vote? Hopefully, no. Okay. We'll go to item J. Consider a resolution waiving the imposition and collection of certain building permit fees to repair structures within the designated disaster area due to damages caused by the July 4th flood event.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First off, I'm all for that. My question, and this is a little bit less about permits and more about code enforcement. One thing we've heard, several of us have heard from, is people getting fines for their tall grass in the middle of all this as well. Is there anything we can do about that to waive that for a certain time period, or at least in those areas, to alleviate that? Because, this city can't keep up with what we have to mow because of what all we're having to deal with the floods. And I know some people are having that same issue.
That is not a question really for his department, but it is, as far as code enforcement, there's not an issue with that as far as making sure that we're not, we've already had individuals that were already damaged by the storm itself. We definitely don't want to add to that as well. So we'll take a look at that. If you'll give me information on those individuals or anyone that's receiving any type of a notice, we can take a look at that and make sure that we're working with them and that they're not, that's not an issue for them at this point.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
May I ask one question with that, mainly to Daniel? I know that we're getting back into our normal rotations with that mowing and all, and specifically in my district, we have the red arroyo that goes through mine and, everyone. If we could not just limit that to the flood-stricken area, because it's taking our employees trying to not only get back in normal rotation, but there's a lot of attention right around, that flood type. But if we could make that citywide, because as that grass is growing, we still have our employees that are concentrating on the north and east. So that's putting them behind and getting the other districts, up to par as far as the tall grass. So if we could consider making that citywide for a specified period of time.
Okay. Mayor, I'll visit with Shane about that, and we'll work through that.
Good deal.
Okay,
Thank you
thank you.
very much. I appreciate it.
Do we have any public comment on that item? Do I have a motion to approve item J? Motion by Patrick to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 6-0. Item L, consider resolutions in support of, number 1, a future interstate highway formula program. Number 2, a future interstate feasibility study for the Heartland Expressway, Theodore Roosevelt Express, and a portion of Ports to Plains High Priority Corridors. Number 3, future interstate designation for the Heartland Expressway, Theodore Roosevelt Expressway, and a portion of Ports to Plains High Priority Corridors, and numbering future interstate segments. Major, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, council people. Thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Question.
Yes, the question is simply to ask Major Hoffhines if he would be kind enough to bring us up to date on what this means for the community. This is a big deal, probably the biggest impact on our community going forward, and we'd love to hear an update from you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. This is a big deal. continuation of this effort, we already have designation all the way from Laredo up to Denver, basically. But then we've got two more stretches. Hopefully you've got the map there that shows you what needs to be included, because originally this was planned to be a trade route all the way from Mexico to Canada. So through our people here in San Angelo, council people, the mayor, and people from TxDOT visiting Washington and several conversations with the state, we finally got a congressional designation for the Ports to Plains section, which we're in. So that federal designation is in place. Now here's part of the issue which leads us up to where we are today. We spend a lot of money and a lot of effort improving ports along the border to get trucks through faster, to get them through more reliable, to make it more efficient. And then we dump them onto a highway system that isn't prepared to handle them. Any of you that have driven I-35 lately know exactly what I mean. That delay is very costly and it's frustrating. So the idea was formed, hey, let's put a north-south interstate over here between I-25 in New Mexico and I-35. Let's give that border crossing some relief. So Ports to Plains was born. So now here we are trying to pump money into this. The problem is that federal government has never had a funding source for interstate construction. They've always been quick to designate, but there's never been any funding. It was all, okay, Texas, this corridor has been designated as Ports to Plains I-27. It's gone through Congress, it's ready to go. Go build it. But there's no money for it. And this is why, if you look back at like I-10, it took 30 years to build it because it was built in pieces. And right now, I-27 is being built in pieces. San Angelo is participating. We're building a relief route. So our little portion is being done. We've got a couple of projects left to make that come completely to fruition. But the MPO Policy Board, TxDOT, FHWA, they've all been cooperating to do those little projects that are leading to that relief route, which is going to increase safety, it's going to increase travel time reliability, and it's going to increase economy when it comes to all that freight trying to get through or around San Angelo to go on further north. Maybe they're going to Chicago, maybe they're going to Denver, maybe they're going all the way to Canada, or maybe they're coming the other direction. So every community along there has been doing their little part. And TxDOT did a feasibility study to see exactly what needed to happen on the entire length of the Ports to Plains corridor here in Texas. What they didn't or couldn't do is do the Heartland Expressway up north or the Theodore Roosevelt Expressway up north. That's out of Texas, so there was nothing they could do there. So these resolutions are, number one, to get Congress to establish a formula fund that will actually fund future interstates, including what we're doing right now. So the formula will all be on, okay, if we've got a multi-state corridor, which we have here, how much does each state have of that corridor that's unfinished? So then that will be the main part of the formula. It won't be, okay, funding by population, which is what we have now, but it will actually be interstate funding based on those numbers. So this is a great thing because this is actually going to make this a cohesive effort all the way from border to border. It's going to actually establish some funding. It's going to get rules. It's going to give rules for actually acquiring that funding. And then from there on, things get better. And why is it important to us? It's important to us because the more that gets finished, the greater the economic development for San Angelo and the surrounding areas. We've got so much here, and you've heard it before. We've got fuel here, we've got fiber, we've got food, we've got everything here, and we need to transport that stuff. This is going to energize that transportation, which is going to increase the reason businesses and people want to relocate to San Angelo. So it is important to us, and I realize that when we look at those corridors, well, you know, they're clear up there. They have a huge impact on us down here, especially when you start thinking about all of the business that's in Canada that wants to come this way. We already have Canadian trucking companies that have established here. And there's a reason for it, because we're sitting right on the edge of the Permian Basin. They can operate out of here. They can go to the Permian Basin, get their business done. They can be back in the same day. Their drivers can be home for dinner. So there's a reason San Angelo is very, very important. It's also very important, as you've heard from Michael Looney, to the rail industry. And one of these days, keeping our fingers crossed, U.S. Customs is going to be done with their part of the Presidio Bridge crossing, and we're going to start seeing economic development from that as well. So there's a lot going on in this corridor. There's a lot that we need to be paying attention to. Thank goodness we've had elected officials here in the past that have been passionate about it, have been stalwart, and have been pushing this effort. And actually, what it kind of did, I-14 came along, that got designated, and it had all the energy. And everybody was saying, well, what about I-27? It just kind of fizzled. Well, then we got our mayor and a bunch of other officials. They headed to Washington again. All of a sudden now, I-27 has all the energy. I-14 is sitting there motoring along. So we don't need to worry about I-14 right now. We need to worry about this effort. So the advisory committee for Ports to Plains came out, and they requested that communities adopt these 3 resolutions so that we can get some strength, some cohesiveness, and a cooperation along the entire corridor from border to border. And that's where we stand now. Any other questions?
Questions from anybody else?
I'd just like to make a quick comment. There's been studies that show communities that are within a 5-mile radius of an interstate, the success that they meet with economic development is tremendous.
Yes.
In those communities that are further away, we don't have, for a community our size, not to have an interstate running through here, it's detrimental to our economic development efforts. And as we look at truly supplementing and reducing that burden on taxpayers, we want to make sure we bring that economic development in here, that brings sales tax revenues in here. So it's vitally important. So these resolutions are tremendous. It's something that we want to support. We want to make sure that we have a unified study, not a fragmented study that each group would have to do individually. But this is something that's key, and I'm glad that it's coming forth right now for City Council for decision.
Thank you so much for your excellent summary. I believe we are in support. So, motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion by Karen, second by Harry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 6-0. Did we have any public comment, Heather? Okay, we will move into our regular agenda. We will go to item A. Consider approving Sourcewell contract number 010925-FECON for the purchase of one mulching attachment from Vermeer, Texas, Louisiana, in the amount of $63,888, utilizing stormwater fund balance and authorizing city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Mr. Ryan Kramer. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everyone. As read, this item is requesting the approval to purchase a mulching head for an excavator. This device is used to remove woody vegetation, including trees. The intention here is to use it in some of our storm drains, specifically related in the short term to some of our storm events. We do have a lot of debris there, and some of the vegetation has helped keep it there. So this device will be used in the short term for that purpose and then has many long-term benefits there. The reason you see it on your regular agenda, which normally would be on your consent agenda, is because we are requesting stormwater fund balance for that purchase, and that does require this regular agenda discussion. I know I've been brief, but I'm happy to elaborate.
Daniel, you have any comments you want to make?
It definitely is important at this point, not just for our standard maintenance, but we look at the storm that we just went through as well and all the flooding. This is definitely a key component. It's something that we want to move forward with.
Any public comment, Heather? May I have a motion to approve item A? Oh, yes, sir, you may.
Good morning, Ryan. Just from my own knowledge, was this already planned pre-flood, or was this because of the flood, now we're trying to help clean them out now?
There was a concept of this tool being a useful tool for our department. The flood has definitely sped that up and encouraged us to look more strongly at it so we can continue with the cleanup.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Good question.
Other questions for Ryan?
Second.
Did we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Karen makes a motion. Harry, is your second still good? Harry seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Ryan.
You've seen the future, right? Admit it, yeah.
Harry's trying to move us along. Item B, public hearing to consider the 2025 to 2029 five-year consolidated plan for the use of CDBG and home grant funds, and authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents and certifications. Presentation by Interim Director Morgan Chegwin of Neighborhood and Family Services.
Good morning.
Good morning, Morgan.
So today what I have before you is the five-year plan for the HUD grants that the city receives. And this is our culmination, our final public hearing to gather public input and to report back to you on what can be done with the funding this year. So there are two grants administered by HUD to the city of San Angelo that I'm sure you're aware of, but just for everybody's information, which is the CDBG Community Development Block Grant, as well as the Home Investment Partnership, HOME. We had this process to guide the use of these federal funds. That's the most important part to the feds when we go back to them. We also published the proposed draft with a 30-day notice and held two public meetings at the rec centers in the evening to try to collect some public input as well. And then today is a proper public hearing to get that final input. So of course, we collected input from citizens, community partners, and leaders. We collected their insights and priorities and how best to benefit low and moderate income residents. Now, a lot of our conversation around all of this really did hinge on the local events of the flood of July 4th and how to support those folks. And so it's important to note that there are immediate resources being deployed and working for that event, while this is a standalone five-year plan for the bigger picture. So for the CDBG grant, for fiscal year 26 going into the new year that we're considering, the grant award was largely flat, which we were really grateful for. We were prepared for significant cuts to this program. There were headlines that this was going to be cut and completely defunded. And so we were prepared for significant cuts and how the city would be poised to act. So although this is a five-year plan that's before you, year one of the five-year plan is largely fully funded. We had not even a $3,000 decrease from fiscal year 25 to 26, and so we're grateful that we can continue operations largely unchanged. So as we go through each of these lines, there's a level of admin that the program funds. The rehab program that we work with property owners that have repairs that are needed. The rehab program, minor repairs and emergency repairs. When folks come in asking for help, we just figure out in which category they really fit. fit there. The HUD grant has also long funded a code compliance officer. We thought this was the year that we would no longer be able to do that and that the general fund would have to either fund that or no longer have that position. But because the grant funding largely held, we were able to continue that. And then we have a debt service component here. There's an old Section 108 loan, a couple of them for local parks, and that just by design decreases a bit every year, and that decreased about the same as our grant award decreased. So good news there on the CDBG side. A total availability of $643,137. On the home side, so for that program, it is a smaller grant of $314,000. Admin, of course, by design is smaller as well. We have a first-time homebuyer assistance program that decreased a small amount. We have a partnership with MHMR to run our tenant-based rental assistance program, and they are not matching with tenants that are eligible. And so the prior year allocation of $64,000 is not on track to be fully expended this year. So it only made sense to go ahead and cut that down to a more reasonable level of $49,000, and they understood that. And in the event they do have eligible folks, we can look at prior year funds, additional allocation. We'll assess, end of first quarter, second quarter, if more funding needs to be addressed there. It's not our intent to leave MHMR clients with no resources. It's just addressing the current trend, and we'll be poised to move on that if needed into the new year. And then our contract with Galilee. So Galilee CDC is our CHODO, which is we're required to have by HUD. And this report is a bit wonky, and I apologize for that. But it states that the prior allocation that's the technical term.
I was going to say that's a technical term, isn't it? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Wonky, yes.
What is a CHODO?
Michael, it's our community housing development organization. Thank you. So we this graph, just raw prior to proposed, shows that the Galilee CDC allotment would increase from $105,000 to $185,000. But last year, if you'll recall, we actually made Galilee whole by using prior year funds, which were available and eligible for this purpose. So really, Galilee is remaining largely flat. This is not a big increase to Galilee. It just, the accounting looks like this. But in real life, what Galilee receives from the city, from the HUD grants, is unchanged for them. So that's what I have before you proposed, and I'm happy to answer any questions and, of course, entertain the statutorily required public hearing.
Daniel, you have any comments you want to make?
The only comment, I don't know what it sounds. And you talked about this a while ago, Morgan. This is really kind of a roadmap for the next 5 years based on funding. And of course, this year we do have funding. Who knows what happens next year? I can tell you that over the past 8 years, the funding has dropped significantly. And so at this point, we're prayerful that we continue with the funding, and we'll keep requesting it as well. But again, this is just that roadmap, and it involves the whole community, from leadership to the citizens that want to come in and let us know what we should be prioritizing. What you see before you is what that priority truly is at this point. But again, just a roadmap, and again, we hope that we just continue receiving that funding here in the future.
Council members, anybody have any questions for Morgan?
I do. Morning, Morgan. What is the best way for the public to apply for these?
Good question. So it's coming by our office. And so, for example, if you don't know if you might qualify for rehab, minor repair, or emergency repairs, but you have a need, lots of information on our website at sanangelo.gov, but also just coming to our office and talking to our really talented and tenured staff and just saying, this is what I'm facing, what can I help with? I've got a water heater that's out. I've got a roof that's leaking. I've got this, that, and the other. And so from the citizen side, you may not know what you qualify for. So on our website, it lists all the income requirements because these are for low income and moderate income households. But you would be surprised at the number of San Angeloans that do actually qualify for these. So look online, see if you fall under those income requirements. And if you do, come by our office, give us a call, and we'll walk you through the process.
Is that the Department Neighborhood Family for Services offices, is that what you're talking about?
Correct, in
Okay.
the backside of 52 West College. We're upstairs from WIC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, Joe?
I don't want to get down too far of a rabbit hole, but is this strictly for homes, or could this be like for a tree by a home, like that died, and maybe an elderly person needed help removing that tree before it fell on the house?
So we
Just
actually
curious, and
did talk.
don't get too much in the weeds,
Yeah.
because I know we need to move on.
We did identify a need in the community that was because of the Winter Storm Uri. There are, in some of our older neighborhoods, a ton of dead trees that are a risk to the home and possibly impeding the right-of-way, that folks that didn't have means to take down those trees when they died, that is just a disaster waiting to happen. And because we didn't have an increase in funds, we didn't propose that as an activity, but I do think it could fall under rehab. We would just need more money.
Okay, cool.
Which I think is what everyone's going to tell you today.
Thank you. Second.
Have a motion by Harry and a second by Joe. I was looking for do we have public comment, Heather?
Yes, Jamal Schoenberg.
Okay. We'll come back if y'all got a question.
Jamal Shumpert, 2817 North Urban Street. Mr. Weiss, to your point, everybody knows I'm at these meetings. I'm well informed, in tune with these things, but I didn't get the invite to that meeting they had at the Neighborhood and Family Services. It's because nobody knows where the meetings are. And Mr. Keeley, to your point, when it comes to first-time home buyers, I think they have to go straight to the bank, and the bank refers them if they're under those eligibility requirements with the city. All the other programs she was talking about, they have an application system in which you do go into the office for. But the first-time home buyers program is a little bit different. She did come up here, and this was supposed to be about an evaluation, and she didn't tell you how many affordable homes they built this year, how many homes they touched with CDBG funding, or how many they did with home funding. It was just a bunch of numbers up here. What I did see mostly was $129,000 in administration. If you actually knew their role as a monitor, I don't think you'd pay them $129,000 for that. They're monitoring Galilee, who is doing pretty much all of the work. I mean, we do run the CDBG program, which we do the repairs on, but it's not even clear if we're using Galilee's contractors or our contractors to do the repair. The entire program itself is confusing. The reason I know this is because I'm in works to create a program for another city government in Texas. These things that they're doing can easily be turned in, and I thought about doing it, but it would only hurt us here in the city. But what they're doing themselves is hurting us. We got an affordable housing program that's been going for about at least 15 years that I know of, probably even 10 years before that. And you can't tell on the north and east side that we've been building homes and fixing them for that long. And furthermore, we won't even know if some of the homes we fixed and put money into over the years were affected by the flood, where we just did a zero-sum game, put money into something that we didn't do a correct environmental review, because that's what's needed on those. So I would take a deeper look into how that program is being ran. I know under Mr. Salas, I picked his brain so much. He's a great guy at times. You know, we disagreed, as I always do with a lot of people. But Mr. Salas thought about fixing up the homes and building yourself real cheap, selling it to the citizens and having that type of program. And that way, if you create a loan program and you get a 0% interest loan to these citizens at like an $80,000 home, I'm pretty sure they'll pay it off pretty soon, and you know, it'll help increase taxes. It'll be better. But thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Jamal. Other public comment? We have a motion by Harry and a second by Joe. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Move to item C, discussion and direction regarding properties located in the floodway and floodplain, and authorization to apply to the National Resource Conservation Services Emergency Watershed Protection Program and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute any related documents. Operations Director Patrick Frerick. Morning,
All
sir.
right. Good morning, Mayor and Council. With the July 4th flood, we as city staff are obviously doing a whole bunch of different things that we normally don't do. But along with that, that event, it also opened up some additional opportunities that aren't normally available for us. Thank you. There you go. So I want to start off with just a little bit of a education session, if you will. We have in the city what is called a designated floodway throughout our town. This is a floodway that is authorized and allocated by FEMA, and it has certain restrictions along with it. So what you'll see here, that crosshatched area is what we call the floodway. That is an area of town or an area of any waterway that has a high potential of risk of floodwaters, runoff, impacting a property that's within that boundary during any rain event, right? In that little blue area that's just beyond that hash area, that's what's called the floodplain. That is the 100-year floodplain. In certain events that meet a certain volume downfall in a time frame, those areas could be potentially impacted by water runoff and flooding. And then outside of that, we have the hazard zone, which is essentially the 500-year floodplain in events such as, well, smaller than what July 4th was, but in those extreme large events, those are also areas that, based on their elevation of those particular properties, it could be impacted by floodwaters. So that is a map that is designated by FEMA, or areas that are designated by FEMA. It has to do with insurance on that. So if you look at the next slide here, on your left-hand side there, just for reference, it's very hard to see, it's very dim, but everything in orange there was part of the inundation from the July 4th flood. So you can see there just the impact of what that flood had on our city. If you look over to on the right-hand side, for just to kind of put it in perspective, all of the black outlined properties there are within that inundation area. So the black outlines are part of that orange on the left. The floodway, the floodplain, and the hazard zone, you can see how they cut through there and how it relates to what happened on July 4th. And I show that to say, while we can try to do something within that boundary, in some events it's going to far exceed what we're capable of preventing or protecting, right?
Patrick, just for
Yes, sir.
some perspective and idea, tell us what we're looking at in terms of the area of town in this, on your left-hand side there. Obviously, we can see there on the one on the Houston Heart, but generally, where does that, from the north to the south to the east to the west, what are we looking at?
So you see everything. So Green Acres is going to be all the way up here on the top, and then you're going to get down here in the sports complex down here at the bottom. So
Okay.
you can kind of see that swath all the way through town there,
Okay.
of where that drainage runoff ran through the middle of town. So some of the difficulties that staff faces when it comes to this floodway, floodplain, and hazard area, properties and structures in the floodway that are imminent are at an imminent risk of future flooding. So if you're in the floodway, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to, at some point, experience a flooding event. Properties and structures in the floodplain are at a high risk. So you can almost guarantee that at some point in San Angelo, we all know that in San Angelo it doesn't rain, and then all of a sudden it rains. And so that floodplain, there's also at a high risk for getting some flood water up near your home or even potentially into your home and property. The structures that were damaged in the flood, within the floodway, they cannot be rehabilitated per our ordinance. The floodway is restricted from any buildings, any structures being placed in that floodway. You can't move dirt in the floodway. You can't change that flow pattern in any way without doing very specific engineering studies that go along with that. So the floodway is very, very restricted as to what we can do. And a lot of those homes that were built prior to any of these regulations coming down and being set forth were impacted by the flood, and so they're having to balance, well, how do I rebuild? How do I rehab? How do I get a permit when our permitting ordinances do not allow that to happen? And for good reason, right? Because it is at a large potential for flooding in the future. The structures damaged in the flood within the floodplain, though, while they can build in the floodplain, they have to have certain requirements. They have to be built at a certain elevation. They have to have protection, some of the other things that go along with that. All of that costs money. All of that is necessary if you're going to build in the floodplain that's presented and approved by the city in order to protect those properties, not only from the person that's building it today, but for any future buyers of that potential property. And that's all done through our planning and our permitting department. Engineering works closely with them, so our engineer, our floodplain manager, is the one that is orchestrating and going through and reviewing all of those and levying what they can and cannot do within those designated areas. I mentioned at the start of this that the July 4th flood opened up some opportunities that aren't normally available. One of those opportunities is through the National Resource Conservation Service. They have a program called the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. And that program, it's one program, but it kind of breaks up into two categories. And I took the liberty of naming these two different categories for simplicity and for conversation purposes. So there's an armoring side, which is more focused on the public works side. It's allowing funding to do projects that protect infrastructure, so roadways, sidewalks, water lines, sewer lines, from erosion, drought, and or flooding. The buyout program, though, is more on the private side. It allows a government entity to have provides funding to a governmental entity to buy out private properties that are at imminent risk of flooding, drought, or erosion. So that's two different components, and I'll go through each one of those in a little more detail in the next slides. So when we talk about the EWP armoring program, it provides funding for projects that safeguard infrastructure from floods, droughts, and products of erosion. So the way that this program works is the city selects sites, the NRCS approves those sites for funding. Then the approval process is a 75%, 25% cost share. So the NRCS pays for 75% of the program. The city is required to pay 25% of the program. They provide all the engineering analysis and the design of it. We bid it out, we construct it, and then we are responsible for maintaining those improvements in their perpetuity. NRCS kind of says that it's a 10-year life. That's just the number that they put on it. I expect it's more for a 15, 20-year life, especially with maintenance activities that are happening on that. So on the right-hand side, we took a trip with the NRCS, kind of looked at some potential projects and some potential sites. These are just a sample of those that we looked at that could be and probably do qualify. So underneath the 19th Street Bridge right there along the river, you can see all the reeling, all the erosion, everything that's happening there that's impacting those piles that are on the bridge. Don't worry, nothing's at harm of falling apart right now, but if you can see if that continues, that it could potentially start causing a problem there. So what this program does is it provides 75-25% split of funding to come in there, armor that, put in riprap, concrete, stabilize all of that base so that that does not continue and it protects that infrastructure. Same thing on the outfall at Rio Concho Drive, just right out here outside the convention center. That outfall is falling apart, which means that drainage structure that drains that neighborhood is at risk of failing. If that infrastructure fails, that neighborhood is at risk for a hazard due to flooding and erosion. And where concrete crosses over South Concho Drive out at the lake, whenever the concrete comes down really hard, it overtops that road. You can see we have some riprap there, but that is constantly blown out, that walks away. So what this program would do would better armor that. It would not only reestablish that riprap, but it would also grout that riprap in so it didn't continue to wash away. Again, those are just examples. There's a whole slew of other projects that are lower in cost, higher in cost. 19th Street's probably the most extreme one that we would see in this program. But that's what EWP armoring would be. Any questions on the armoring side?
Questions for Patrick?
Do you have a time frame?
So part of this, and I'll get to it, but I'll go ahead and we have 60 days from the date of the event to put in an application in RCS, a letter of request to be included in this program. So we have 60 days from, I think it's July 7th or whatever
We're
they
already halfway through
designated
it.
was. And then they have 60 days to evaluate our sites and say, yes, these are good. So, and then the process starts for design and construction. And so it's not a quick turnaround, but it does get the ball moving fairly quickly as far as authorization is concerned.
And it sounds like we have to make that decision fairly quickly as well.
Yes, so that's at the end here. It's an action item on this particular item today. So the second category, EWP buyout, it provides funding for a voluntary buyout program of properties that are at imminent risk of damage, floods, droughts, and products of erosion. Keep in mind, while we talked about the floodway, the floodplain, and the hazard zone earlier, this program isn't necessarily restricted to those areas, okay? This program can be used throughout the city on any property that is at hazard, and we have properties all over the city that we're well aware of as staff have a high exposure or high experience of flooding or water coming up to their homes. So there's a lot of properties throughout the city who could take advantage of this program. Again, it is completely voluntary. The property owner must opt in to the program before we can even start discussions with them on whether we can buy out their property. So there's a general notification, then there's a very specific notification that goes out. That specific notification has to be signed, opted into, and returned back to the city before we can start negotiating. So it is not a taking, it is not anything like that. It is a voluntary cooperative relationship that us and the private property owners will have on that particular piece of property. Again, it's a 75-25% cost share. The approval process goes through the NRCS. There's a whole slew of things that have to happen for that approval. They classify it as a simple 25-step program for each property that you want to buy. So there is a very well-vetted, well-documented process in place to get this done. So it's nothing that can go through and just be pencil whipped through. It is a very comprehensive program. Not only is it just buying out properties, but it also covers additional costs to that in payment to that property owner. So it's the purchase of the property. If there's tenants on the property and you have to relocate those tenants in order to sell them, there's some relocation costs for those tenants, some remediation money. So if we have to go in and clear the property, it'll help pay for that clearing of the property, and then reestablishment. So if we do any grading work and we have to put vegetation back down, it'll help pay for that vegetation. So it really is a comprehensive program. It's not just a buyout, it's a buyout and reestablishment. The criteria of this program is there's some legal restrictions that go along with this. We have to own the property. We have to own the property in perpetuity, and we cannot do anything with the property. We can't allow any structures to be put on it. It has to be maintained in a free and clear space. There's some variation in that if you want to do walking trails and nature trails and stuff like that through the area. But for now, we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to say, we're going to remove obstacles, we're going to clear it, and we're going to make sure that nothing is, if it does flood, nothing is going to be impacted from it. So we as staff, obviously, this is a big deal, right? This could grow very, very quickly, very, very fast, especially if you look at the full inundation area. So we understand that we're going to have to pare this program down in some case. The picture there on the right, if you'll see again, that is that area south of the loop within the East Angelo draw confines that were the biggest impact and are usually the biggest impact during large rain events that happen on the north side of town. So this area not only was the biggest impact in July 4th, but they also experience a lot of impact in normal rain events as well in the right areas. Come to find out on July 4th, Short Street is also a major area of concern for us. In looking at Short Street, you know, there was a lot of comments about why don't y'all fix, why don't y'all do, we can't. There's no good way to solve that problem on Short Street. It's a natural playa lake, it's a depression, everything in the area runs to that area. So this is a perfect opportunity to utilize this program to get those properties under our control so that we can ensure that a private property owner isn't experiencing the same thing that they just experienced. Coincidentally enough, this area was identified within the North Chadbourn Street sidewalk project for us as a playa and a potential drainage area for that area. We weren't aware of it up until that point. So it was proven out in the July 4th flood. We really want to do something in this area. So again, it's not listed in the floodway per FEMA or floodplain or any of that, but it is an area that would apply to this program given the history that we just saw. So there's other areas around town, Era Street, Evelyn, some of those properties too that could be could utilize this program as well. Just to kind of put it into perspective, the areas there on the right, just south of the loop, you're talking about 110 properties with a valuation of about $12 million. So kind of put that into perspective of what we're talking about, just if we were to focus south of the loop in that area. And that's the only...
Say one more time, how many properties?
110 properties that are touching the floodway, not the floodplain, just the floodway, just the hatched area, with a current CAD valuation of about $12 million. The cool thing about this program is when we're negotiating is they utilize that CAD value as a value for the property. So homeowners we're not negotiating and bargaining with negotiators, right? We're using an established market value per the CAD pre-flood of what that value of that property is just to start that conversation. So there's two things I need from you guys today, discussion and direction. So do y'all want us to start talking about buying out some of these properties? Do you want us to start looking at, as staff, some of these armoring programs and taking advantage of this NRCS program to do some of these things? This is a big ask. This is a big lift. If you talk about 110 properties, just there, that's 110 individual projects that are going to have to be vetted by staff, coordinated by staff. Real estate's going to need some help to get this done. So it's a huge ask. It's also a huge monetary obligation for us. It's important. It's very important, especially when you talk about the floodway and what this could mean for the life of the city of San Angelo in perpetuity. It's money well spent, in my opinion. But it's money that we don't necessarily have today, so we'll have to find it. And that's part of the discussion that I'd like to have with you guys, or have you all have, is how much, where. Maybe that's just sending finance and Tina and Daniel and us to go find some money and come back with options. So I'm not asking for an obligation to that side of y'all today. The only obligation I need from y'all today is this action item that says authorization to apply to this program. That gets the ball rolling, that gets it started. Everything sequential to that will come back to council for further approval before we start expending any type of money. This is just authorization to apply to that program so we can get those projects in front of them and get them started, get that ball rolling.
Tommy, if I may, majority of these homes south of Houston Hart belong to Patrick and I. They're in our district. We share that. So I'm going to say this. They're not going to be able to rebuild if they're in the floodway. Is that my understanding?
That is correct. If their home is in the flood, if their structure is in the flood.
From my perspective, we need to do something. So I would suggest that we pursue this plan, figure out how we're going to make it work, and then look at long term. What are we going to use those particular areas for? Green space, whatever we need to do. But I would actually let other council people talk first, but I'd like to see this go forward.
Let me ask Daniel, do you have any comments
Yeah,
you want to add?
yeah, and you're correct. Basically, those individuals that are in the floodway aren't going to be able to build there regardless, and that's troubling to me because there's individuals there that lived there for such a long time, houses that were paid off. And now they're having to move, be relocated. Now they're going to have to rent. They're going to have to do whatever they can to survive. And that's very problematic for me. I would prefer to take a look at as Patrick just mentioned a while ago, it's a deeper discussion financially that I would have to have with finance, with Tina, to look at the possibility for funding. Let me ask you a question, Patrick. On the 75-25, as far as the cost share, what percentage of that can be in kind on our end?
So potentially all of it could be
Okay,
in
good.
kind, right?
Okay.
So as we do our due diligence with environmental studies and planning and development stuff, real estate activities, all of those can be part of our 25% match.
I
for
just
that
want to make sure to
program.
make that clear because some of it's not going to be the monetary portion that the city puts into it. And I just want to have the opportunity to be able to explore what the cost would be on our end. And I would recommend that we actually move forward with what Patrick's recommending on our end and to at least pursue and see what we can do to help these individuals. I do want to make sure that in the future, from here on out, every time it rains, I'm going to be worried that there's going to be people along that way that are going to be suffering again, and I don't want that to happen. So just I do ask for us to give us the opportunity to sit down and look at the financial impact of it, and come back to council and say, hey, this is what we think we can do moving forward.
Other council members have comments or questions?
Yes, I have one. Patrick, the homes that are identified, you say 110 of them. I like Daniel, I have a real problem telling people to get out of their home. But could they, if you did not do this plan, those citizens do have the ability to rebuild if they want to. It's their.
I'll have to let permits and planning answer that specifically. The way I understand it is there's some heavy restrictions on if they can build in that floodway. So I know you cannot put structures in the floodway, but in some of these cases, half the property's in the floodway, half of it is in the floodplain. So there's some gray area there, but I don't know if Aaron wants to come and speak
Aaron, you want
specifically to
to
that.
address
Well, is
that
this
for
an all or
council?
nothing thing? If you've got 110 homes right there.
No, ma'am.
It's all-
It's completely voluntary.
It
So
is,
the property
okay.
owner has to say, yes, I want to explore this program. Yes, I want to have those conversations, and that'll open it up for us.
But they still have their free will
They
to,
do.
we can,
Right. And please note too that this program doesn't affect anything that they would get from FEMA as part of the flood response and any payment from FEMA for those damages. This would be
Let's hear
separate
from
that.
Aaron, because they may want to, but they may not be able to. So Aaron, walk us through that, if you don't mind.
Yes, Aaron Vanoy, Director of Planning Development Services. So to answer the question, Councilwoman, is it depends on the percentage of destruction. There's a clause in our zoning ordinance that depends on the percentage of destruction and what they're zoned. And then when you're talking about floodway, that's very, very restricted by FEMA. We work with our engineering services department to look at those properties to see, are they eligible to build back or not? More than likely, the answer is no. Floodplain is different. They could get an elevation certificate to raise their property, their structures, high enough that might not be affected by a 100-year flood. There's a process to go through our engineering services department for that. And then that 500-year, that orange area that Patrick was talking about, they don't have to do anything special. It's just an awareness of our community that when you have a rain event such as this, that can cause damage to those structures, which then causes additional cost for everyone. And so from a fiscal standpoint for the city as a whole, while we certainly have compassion and concern for those property owners, this might be a viable way for those property owners to obtain some money for a piece of property that may not be buildable in the future. And then the city's able to manage those properties moving forward so that they could be used for future parks or future trails, but they wouldn't be properties that we would have future damage and destruction because of flooding events in these areas. But the permitting process, it really kind of comes down to percentage of destruction of whether they can go back. But we work with each one individually. If there's a concern, we certainly bring those forward to Planning Commission, City Council to help us make those decisions. But normally, it really just depends on percentage of destruction and where they fall on the map.
In doing that, it comes up with developers quite a bit, the detention ponds. If, let's say, the majority of these homes followed that and we took ownership of them, would that not necessarily fix completely, but would that, having those detention ponds, would that solve some of our problems with, I know when developers are trying to put in, would that help solve that problem? And it would be at the expense of the city and not that of the developer.
I think that's what some of the evaluation that Patrick was talking about, is that evaluate those areas of what makes sense for playa ponds.
Yes.
And areas that would help slow down and contain water and slowly release it back to the East Angelo draw and those areas. The challenge with our current stormwater ordinance, it really doesn't trigger that in these older parts of town. It's with new development and new areas for stormwater detention, because the properties individually usually don't hit the threshold for triggering it. But that, I'm sure that is on Patrick and Shane's mind, of how do we help mitigate that water flow to slow it down, contain it, and then let it flow down at a reasonable rate into those areas. Of course, they would be working through studies to figure those things out.
That, yeah, operating in tandem, two separate projects, but could be, accomplished at the same time, really.
And I think it is important to note, too, that we have a stormwater fee and a stormwater fund, but I want to make sure that we define that stormwater in this definition and what's been assigned by past councils for that fee structure only deals with water quality, right? It does nothing for water quantity, which is typically the drainage stuff that you're seeing, that we're talking about today. There is not a funding mechanism that the city currently has to generate funds for these type of projects, for the type of projects you're talking about. We're looking at a rate study. We're in the middle of a rate study right now that can be a component of that, of a drainage fee that comes down, that provides a funding and a revenue stream to purchase properties, to build detention ponds, to do things to help protect people from flooding and runoff impact. But currently today, as it stands, we do not have a funding mechanism to pay for those type of projects. So that's why I said we'll have to work with Tina to find money for this particular program, because this is happening faster than that rate study could go into effect. But it is on our radar. It is absolutely something we're concerned about. It's something that is a priority for us as staff. It's something we deal with all the time, every time it rains. So we're putting together a plan to come back to you guys later and potentially discuss some of those options.
Patrick?
Anybody else have comments or questions?
Can you go back to your flood map?
Yes, sir.
And some of this is just a statement for anybody that's paying attention to this.
You want the big one?
Yeah, if you've got it. So the blue area, and a lot of people ask why didn't they have flood insurance, stuff like that. Any of the gray area, a bank is not going to require flood insurance. The blue area, when you go to buy a home in that area, that's when they do a flood report and they see that it's on there and they say you're going to need flood insurance. And so I think that's what people didn't realize, is how much way outside of FEMA that was affected, and that's why nobody had flood insurance, because it was not on anybody's 500-year radar. And people can go find that. You can just Google FEMA flood map by address, put your address in, and it'll pinpoint exactly where you're at, and you'll be able to see on that map. I'm all in favor of this, trying to find a way to fund it, because I'm sure Harry's had calls too. We've had several people call, and they say, hey, can I rebuild? And we go, and it's right in the middle of that floodway. They had no idea, because they built it in 1960 and lived there ever since, and just never rained enough for it to actually hit them. But then we look it up on the map, and it's like, yeah, you're right there. So I'm all for it, trying to figure out a way to fund it, whatever we can do.
We as staff have, throughout the years, been able to pick and buy little pieces here and there through there, but comprehensively, we own comparatively almost none of that floodway from the city. It is almost all privately owned. We may own a handful of 10 to 12 12 little parcels throughout that, but for the most part, it is all privately owned, which tells us we cannot do anything on it. We can't even enter that property to clean it up, to mitigate it, to mow it, to do anything that helps that drainage through that property.
Anybody else?
So just.
Go ahead, Joe.
You can get out of having flood insurance if you own the property. If you owe money on the property, then yes, that mortgage company's gonna make you have that flood insurance if it's in there. But if you own it outright, you can opt out of it. There's a lot of people on the north end that have already paid for their house and they didn't have flood insurance because of that. Another quick question, and I guess if there's a structure there, and let's say they're just putting sheetrock back, and can they go back in there and do that without going through the city, without all that, and it still be in that property area? I know that's a big loaded question.
Thank you. Aaron Vanoy again. We do have a process. If it doesn't trigger a building permit, which means they're not touching a structural member, and they're not having to get a mechanical, electrical, or plumbing permit, replacing sheetrock in those properties that are outside the floodway, that are outside the hatched area, more than likely they will not have to do anything additional. We would still refer them to our floodplain manager to let them evaluate that. The floodway is a different matter. If FEMA says you shouldn't have structures there, and to our knowledge today, the ones that were in that way have had enough damage that they trigger a building permit and further evaluation that are in the floodway.
Okay.
And so those are the ones that are of most concern, but again, those properties, kind of start in the floodway, extend all the way out, and how do we assist in future events?
I'm in full support of this. We need to apply for it so that we have that option. Don't get me wrong. I'm just, Aaron, you're also talking about an older part of the neighborhood or area where you might have someone that goes in there and fixes the stuff up, says, I'm staying. And I'm just
yes, sir.
saying, sorry.
I think the voluntary part of it is a big deal. We want to make sure that's there. But on these, because we talked about some of the areas, if they already have the structures there, there's nothing the city can do, even if it's in a regulated floodway. Like some of it, there's fences and things like that that are in our drainage area, but they're on private property. So there's nothing we can do about that, correct? Unless they apply for a new permit to change that structure.
That's a good question. I'm going to assume that we probably would try to get them to come into voluntary compliance to help with some items, but I'm not sure that we could force them. We'd have to look into that further, but I'm not sure that's our stance, is that we need to force them to remove a fence or something at this time. But we obviously evaluating the area, getting some data back that helps the team make some better decisions to bring forward to you guys is very helpful.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Let me encourage us, let's zoom out a little bit here, maybe to the 50,000-foot view. We were unfortunate here in San Angelo on July the 4th. We know other communities in this state were as unfortunate, if not more so, than we were here. I hope we use this as an opportunity in the big picture to not just look at this area, but we may have some other areas that may be at risk, maybe not quite as much at risk as this area, but let's don't just cast that aside. Let's don't kick that can down the road proverbially when we are starting to look at these sort of things. And it may not fit this program, but at least maybe we can identify those areas so that I'll say when funding can be sourced, that there's other areas we can address in a similar fashion, or maybe even with another creative solution. It seems to me that this is, nobody plans on the event that we had on July the 4th. We all say this, it's not going to do that here. Well, it did. So let's take a big look at this while we're looking at it too. I think that's wise, just from an overall city perspective.
Going to take the opportunity to pat ourselves on the back slightly with that. We do have a master drainage plan that was established in 2000, updated in 2020, that identified those areas that are at imminent risk of drainage problems, right? So we have that listing, we have that prioritization, we have that quantification. That's already in place. We have a grant application in with the Texas Water Development Board through the Flood Infrastructure Fund to take a more global look at this and look for regional detention areas. So what that plan will do, if it's funded, if it's approved and funded, we'll take a look at our ETJ, our growth patterns, the elevations through there, and identify properties in those growth patterns that says this is a great place for regional detention. City, you need to go try to figure out how to buy this, and you need to encourage developers or require developers to push all of their water into this area as a comprehensive regional detention that serves the whole region, comprehensively protects everything that's already established as well as everything that could be built. We as staff have already got those things in place. Aaron as well is working on the comprehensive plan. I think y'all are going to hear some more about that later on this afternoon. The comprehensive plan is also going to do exactly what you said. It's going to identify some of those hazards as well. So staff is a little bit ahead of you on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But I wanted to make sure that we're not just sitting back on our haunches waiting for something to happen. We do look ahead, we do plan, and we're moving forward with some of this stuff to
Good. Well,
hopefully get
I'm
some.
glad I said it, and so that gave you the opportunity to inform my ignorance. So thank you for doing that. Other
To approve?
We have a motion to
Well,
approve.
let's make sure we understand what we're approving first.
Yeah,
First of all, really, what we're looking at an approval letter, is that correct? Let's go back to there, make sure that on our end, we need to provide a letter of request to the NCRS, NRCS, I'm sorry, and that's for the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. So we need that, the permission from the city council.
Authorization to apply.
Authorization to submit that letter to the NRCS is all I need from you guys today.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
There you go.
Do you have a second? We have 2 seconds down there on the end.
All right.
Patrick made the motion, and you can pick Joe or Harry. Yeah, because it's in here. Yeah, we'll give that to Harry. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. Any public comment?
Yes, Fabian Fernandez.
Mr. Fernandez. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name's Fabian Fernandez. I live on 1721 Eckert Street. We don't live in the floodplain, but we live in a flood zone. My family's owned that property. Me and my sister, we inherited it. We've had it it's been in the family since the 50s. Anyways, so there's a house on one part of the property. I live on the lower end of the property where I raised my family. My parents were there before that and everything. So we got hit with flood on July 4th. We'd never seen that kind of rain, any kind of water come up ever that high. So my family's in a position right now that I need to secure. I mean, the house is livable, blah, 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 but it's going to take a lot of money to get it fixed. Not, just more money than what it's worth. Let's put it that way. So I was kind of calling, I called downtown, stuff like that, see if I could get a modular home. It's not a trailer house, nothing. What me and my wife were trying to do is move that or put that house, that structure, on the upper part of the land, so we're not in the floodplain. We're not in the zone. We're in. I saw that deal. We're between our properties on G and E. We're not in the floodplain. We're in the flood. We're in A and E, where it's the flood zone, and the blue mark there. And we're trying to get because the property that me and my sister own together, it's not in the flood zone, but it's not in the flood zone, but the floodplain, a quarter of it, and the rest of it's up on higher ground. So my question is, I understand you got to go through zoning, everything. Since we own the property, we've lived there all our lives. Is there any way that we could have not leniency, but consideration that we want to put a better home there for our family? And something more structured, they're built better. The way I was looking at them, we did our, check on it, everything. They're pier and beam. They're considered modular homes because they're built off-site, then they're put together on-site. So it's not a trailer house, you know.
What we'll do, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Fernandez,
Yes,
if it's
sir.
okay with you, if you'll visit with Mr. Vanoy.
Yes, sir.
He is the one that can help you work through that process, so
Mhm.
whenever we finish the meeting here, I bet he'll hang around and be glad to visit with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand. And that was my question. Another question is, our property is privately owned, of course, up to that floodplain, right, flood zone. We do see a bottleneck. I mean, I've lived there all my life. We see a bottleneck, I want to say on the southeast side, where the city owns property on that side. And it's not, all it is just because vegetation just holds everything. So maybe trimming all through there. And then there's another property adjacent on the other side of the sewer line.
You can visit with Mr.
Yeah.
Frerick on that,
That's
and he can walk through that.
I didn't know 3 minutes went that quick.
It passes
I guess I'm
pretty fast,
long-winded.
doesn't it?
I guess I'm long-winded. So. All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes, sir. Well,
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
comments.
Aaron, will you get his address for me as well?
Heather, others?
Oh, that's all.
Okay.
So you guys just approved a piece of equipment that'll help that out. Thank you.
Good. We're glad we did that for you, Patrick. So we have a motion by Patrick, second by Harry, to submit this authorization to apply to the National Resource Conservation Services Emergency Watershed Protection Program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, and we'll see y'all back with some more detail.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, we'll go to item D, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending the budget for fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2024, ending September 30, 2025 for health insurance claims and premiums, property insurance proceeds, flood response funding, Costa DC Affordable Housing Flood Program, Costa DC Business Flood Relief, Comprehensive Plan, and Coliseum Bond proceeds. Tina Dierski.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tina Dierski. I've lost my voice. Perfect.
I was
day
going to
for
say,
that.
I talked to you yesterday and you didn't sound that way.
She did a lot of talking yesterday.
Did a lot of talking yesterday. Okay, so this first one is for the bond proceeds that went to the voters on May 3rd for the Coliseum in the amount of $41,660,000 to include costs of issuance. Excuse me. Any questions on that one? Okay, this next one is earmarking some funds for the update to the city's comprehensive plan. You'll see this later on in the budget workshop as well, but this will be a use of general fund balance. Aaron is still going out for a grant for this plan as well. If or when we receive that grant, we'll true up this amount to what's needed for the plan. This amendment is coming from the Development Corporation. This part is for affordable housing in the a total amount of $1 million. We do have some affordable housing funds that are unprogrammed on the ballot side. That's the 183. And then the remainder would come from the economic development side. Any questions on that one?
Questions, council? Go, proceed.
Okay, this other one is also for flood-related damages. I believe this $1 million is related to the businesses located in that damaged area. Also coming from the fund balance. Excuse me. Okay, this is budgeting $2 million coming from some built-up program revenue in the intergovernmental fund balance. This is going to be held in the general fund for the city's response to damages to city infrastructure. We still hope to get reimbursed for a lot of that through FEMA and/or insurance, but we need some upfront money to get us going. And in the event that we receive that funding, it'll come back into the fund. Also, budgeting $60,000 in the property casualty out of fund balance for flood response, and TML insurance proceeds of almost $300,000. This next one is for the health insurance fund, projecting from today through year end to need about $3.5 million Citywide, we've allocated those amounts out by FTE counts in each of the funds. That's going to be about $2.5 million out of the general fund, and the remainder will come from other funds, fund balances. Also, operating funds for the over 65 retiree insurance in the amount of $300,000, and then health insurance fund, $44,490 from that fund balance. And then this next one is budgeting for insurance proceeds related to hail-damaged vehicles from TML in the amount of $337,000. This was from a previous storm. That's all I have on the budget amendment. If you have any questions.
Comments, Daniel, on any of this?
No comments at this point. Pretty straightforward, all of the needs that we have that we need to address at this point. Tina, thank you. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Addressing those in detail, so thank you.
Yeah, some of these that came out of fund balance, you'll see later in the budget workshop as well. And we may have an opportunity to go in more detail if you have questions.
Council, questions for Tina?
Move to approve.
Have a motion to approve by Harry, second by Mary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our regular agenda. We do not have closed session today. We have item 8B, consider approving various board nominations. Audit Committee, Tommy Hebert, Single Member District 1, Mary Coffey, Single Member District 6. Have a motion to approve by Harry, second by Joe. Any public comment, Heather? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 6-0. We will adjourn this meeting and then go, I think I saw the mayor had come in, so we'll take a break here. I think they need to set up some things anyway. So do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Motion to adjourn by Harry, so do I have a second? Second by Joe. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 6-0. This meeting is concluded. The regular city council meeting is concluded at 10.